The Hijrah historical journey of the Prophet to Medina, 622 CE. Before the footsteps of the Prophet echoed on the path to Yathrib, before the desert winds whispered the word Hijrah, a series of signs and sorrows unfolded in Mecca. The boycott had ended, but hearts had hardened. The people of Taif had rejected him. Abu Talib and Khadijah, his strongest pillars, had returned to their Lord. And yet, in the darkest nights, hope still shimmered. Among the most wondrous of these nights came a miracle that lit the skies, a divine sign not just for the Quraysh, but for all of mankind. In Mecca, a city of granite hills and stubborn hearts, the message of the Prophet had now echoed for more than a decade. Words of oneness, of accountability, of mercy. But many among the Quraysh remained unmoved, proud, powerful, and blind to the light rising in the midst of them. They mocked him. They called him a poet, a madman, a magician. If you truly are sent by God, they challenged him one night, then show us a sign, split the moon for us, if you're truthful. It was arrogance, not curiosity, but the Prophet, without fear or hesitation, turned his face to the heavens, and by the will of Allah, the moon split. Before their very eyes, it broke into two distinct parts, each glowing on opposite sides of the sky above Mount Hira. The people gasped. Some rubbed their eyes. "It's sorcery," they whispered. "This must be magic." But those with vision, those with open hearts, they knew. This was no trick of light. This was no illusion. This was a sign that truth had come and that the hour was drawing near. And still, many turned away. For miracles do not shake the hearts that have chosen blindness. And so the persecution worsened. But Allah was preparing a new chapter, a new home, a new dawn. Far to the north, in a city called Yathrib, hearts were softening, and soon the messenger would be called, not with a miracle in the sky, but with open arms and a promise of safety. Surah Al-Qamar 54:1-1. The hour has drawn near, and the moon has split. Iqtarabatis. Sa'atu wa shakal qamar. Hijrah. A journey that changed history. It was the 12th year of the prophethood. The sun scorched the narrow alleys of Mecca, but it was nothing compared to the heat of hostility that blazed in the hearts of Quraysh. Prophet Mohammad and his small band of followers had borne year after year of mockery, economic boycott, torture, and yet they stood firm. But now the tide had turned ominous. The Quraysh had made a chilling decision: kill Muhammad and end this once and for all. That night, as the Prophet prayed in solitude, divine permission came. He would leave his beloved city, not as one who fled defeat, but as one embarking on destiny. This was not escape. It was Hijrah, a migration not just of body, but of belief, purpose, and the birth of a civilization. It was the darkest of nights in Mecca. Outside the home of the Prophet Muhammad, armed men from every clan of Quraysh lay in wait, their swords ready. They thought this night would end his mission forever. But inside, the Prophet entrusted his cousin Ali ibn Abu Talib, R.A., with a dangerous task: to sleep in his bed, covering himself with the Prophet's green cloak so the assassins would be deceived. And then quietly he stepped out, reciting verses from the Quran. "And we have put a barrier before them, and a barrier behind them, and covered them so they do not see." Surah Yasin 36:9. The Prophet made his way to the house of Abu Bakr, R.A., his closest friend and ally. Abu Bakr had been preparing for weeks, with 2 camels ready and provisions packed. When he heard the Prophet's words, "Permission has been given for us to leave," his eyes filled with tears, not out of fear, but of honor that he would accompany the messenger of Allah on this most critical journey. They set out southward, not towards Yathrib, but in the opposite direction, to throw off the Quraysh. For 3 days they hid in the cave of Thar. The Quraysh search parties came so close that one stood right at the cave's entrance. Abu Bakr whispered, "If they look down, they will see us." But the Prophet reassured him, "Do not be afraid. Allah is with us." By Allah's command, a spider spun its web across the entrance, and a dove laid her nest, signs that deceived their pursuers. When the danger lessened, they emerged and began the long trek to Yathrib. The desert was merciless, Endless dunes, scorching sun by day, freezing winds by night. But the Prophet walked with calm dignity, comforting Abu Bakr, reciting Quran, and guiding their small caravan. Along the way, a man named Suraka ibn Malik pursued them for the bounty on the Prophet's head. Yet his horse stumbled and sank into the sand, again and again, until he begged for mercy and was granted protection. The journey through the harsh desert was long and exhausting. One day they came upon the tent of Mabad, a strong and generous Bedouin woman. The Prophet and Abu Bakr, R.A., approached, weary and hungry. But the tent was bare. No food, no milk, only a frail goat too weak to stand. Mabad apologized, but the Prophet gently asked, "Will you allow me to try?" He placed his hand on the goat and invoked the name of Allah. To her astonishment, the goat's udders swelled. Milk flowed freely. They drank. She drank. The Prophet left the remaining milk for her family. Later, when her husband returned and heard the story, he exclaimed, "By Allah, this is the man the Quraysh are seeking. If I meet him, I will follow him." This wasn't just a miracle. It was a moment that preserved for generations one of the clearest physical descriptions of the Prophet. Noble, radiant, calm, a man unlike any other. Mabad described him with awe. A man of striking appearance, bright countenance, beautifully proportioned. His speech is sweet, his words precise, silent when silent, radiant when speaking. Even amid escape and danger, the Prophet left behind traces of light, turning the desert into testimony, turning a hungry tent into a sanctuary of faith. Back in Yathrib, soon to be known as Medina, hearts burned with anticipation. Men, women, and children would go out each day, gazing toward the desert horizon. And then they saw him. Cries of, "He has come! He has come!" echoed through the oasis. The Ansar, noble hosts of Medina, welcomed him with love, and a song filled the air. Tala'a al-Badru alayna. The full moon has risen over us. This was no ordinary migration. It was the pivot of history, from a persecuted minority in Mecca to a united ummah in Medina. The Hijrah wasn't just the start of the Islamic calendar. It marked the beginning of a new civilization rooted in justice, mercy, and divine law. And so the Prophet Muhammad entered Medina, not as a refugee seeking shelter, but as a leader, a teacher, and a bringer of light. Every soul has its Hijrah, a moment to leave behind fear, pain, or darkness, and walk towards light, towards truth. The Prophet's journey was not just through the desert. It was a journey through time, leaving footprints that we still follow. But peace would not last forever. The Quraysh were not done. Across the desert, they were sharpening their swords, preparing for the first great confrontation. In our next episode, we will witness the Battle of Badr, a clash where the believers stood outnumbered yet unshaken, and the course of Islamic history was forever altered. If you found meaning in this journey, support the series by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your engagement helps bring these stories to more hearts around the world. And don't forget to turn on the bell icon so you won't miss episode 4, The Battle of Badr, Victory Against All Odds. Together, let's keep walking through the pages of history, one story at a time.